welcome everyone to the 7th episode of my new podcast called Pug Fireball and Company. My guest today is Jim Marshall, a former Major League player for the Baltimore Orioles, Chicago Cubs, San Francisco Giants, New York Mets, and Pittsburgh Pirates, and a Major League and minor league manager. And I knew you had managed the Cubs briefly, then I wasn't aware, I forgot that you had also managed the Oakland A's for a while. Jim is one of the 13 former Major League and former players and front office personnel I've written about for the Society for American Baseball Research. And Jim's one of those. Since then, I've been in contact with him about once a month by phone. Good morning, Jim. Please share with us where you are from originally and where you went to school.
Well, I was born in Danville, Illinois, and I moved to California at a very young age. And then I stayed in California and played both junior high school ball, American Legion ball, and was involved in all those activities before I signed a contract in the pros.
For those who don't know, Danville is the eastern side of Illinois. It's pretty close to the Indiana-Illinois border, kind of east central Illinois. I think it's where the Van Dyke brothers were from too, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. So in reading about you and doing the biography, I saw that you were quite a high school basketball player too. Were you a better baseball player or basketball player?
Well, I think at the time in high school and at the time that Johnny Wooden approached me from UCLA to come there on a scholarship, I would have to say at that time I was a better basketball player.
That you anticipated my next question, which was John Wooden tried to recruit you when you were 18 years old, I believe. Why did you not go to UCLA and play basketball?
Well, I guess the answer to that is that I had my heart full of wanting to play baseball so much that I decided to go the professional way instead. But I'm not sure it wasn't a mistake because it took me 6 years in the minor leagues to get to the big leagues.
Well, of course, college basketball wasn't quite the big thing it is today back then. And that was really before Wooden's great UCLA teams. Those didn't come around till the 60s, really. And I believe you played in the Hearst Sandlot Classic at the Polo Grounds in New York City, featuring the best high school baseball players in the country in 1949. So what was that experience like?
Well, they picked two players from Southern California represent the USA against the New York teams, and I was chosen as one of those two players. And I was on my way and enjoyed it. We actually played in Yankee Stadium, and it was quite a thrill for me to be there. The lights were the most impressive thing of all. Could see the ball. And one of my teammates was a close friend, was Gene Conley, who was a pro basketball and baseball player. And I had a great experience and was proud to represent California.
Yeah, Conley was a big, tall guy, a pitcher, I think, for the Braves.
Boston.
Do you remember any other players from that game that people would know now or recognize their names?
I don't think so. There were a lot of different players from, especially the other team, but Gene was my teammate, and we pretty much hung out together.
And I think your team won, I think.
Yes, we did. And Oscar Vitt was the manager,
Mm-hmm.
and the shortstop, Maryville.
Yeah, Rabbit Moranville.
Yes, yes, he was also
Mm-hmm.
there.
He was the other coach or manager. Yeah. So after that game, at least I've read that you and your parents were guests of Tom Yawkey, who owned the Boston Red Sox for 3 days, and then you were guests of the St. Louis Browns. So what did you do when you were guests of those teams?
Well, actually, I worked out and took batting practice with those ball clubs, and that was kind of the treat. And then be able to be with the parents and sit and watch the games. I didn't end up being with any of those teams, but it was an experience.
Ted Williams was with the Red Sox then, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. It was the last year of Ted Williams. Was 1960, and he was a really nice guy. He didn't talk about anything but hitting. I used to feed the batting machine to him all the time, and the thing that impressed me the most was even on a batting machine, he would not swing at a pitch that was not a strike. And he kept telling me, "Make sure that machine's working right, will you?"
So that was his big hitting advice to you, huh? That
Yeah, it
was his
was
biggest tip.
get strikes. Yes, it
Wow,
was.
yeah, hit strikes. Well, it's just easier said than done, especially when they're throwing 95, 100 miles an hour like they are today.
Well, they threw 90 some miles an hour when I played.
What did you think of Fenway Park? That must have been a fun experience.
Well, I loved hitting there because, first of all, the background was so outstanding. It
Oh,
was a dark green, and it was so easy to follow the ball out of the pitcher's hand. And number two is that you could go to the opposite field, and I was a left-hand hitter, so going to the opposite field, I had a good chance on any fly ball I hit that way. So I would have loved to have hit there, but wasn't that fortunate. But that's what I learned while I was there.
what did your parents think at the time of all this excitement going on with you?
Well, I think mom was a great mom and did all the things to make me feel good. And my father was somewhat interested in when I would turn professional and who that would be with, and that's about what it was all about.
I read that you had turned down some pretty sizable bonuses to not sign a big bonus and then maybe sit on the bench for a couple of years. You wanted to play.
Yes, and I know that sounds rather crude in today's world, not to take the money, but I did want to play, and I wouldn't have played much had I been have to sit on the bench. So we decided to take a little less money and have the opportunity to play, and I got that in a lot of years. Okay.
Speaking about money, how much did you make your first year in the major leagues? People would be surprised, I suppose, nowadays at what they were making back then.
Well, it only hurts for a little while. I made $6,000, which was the minimum in those days, and now it's 750,000. So, Steve, I've been around a long time.
You just can't comprehend that 6,000 versus 750.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Um, then you, of course, you played for the Orioles, the Cubs. Um, what was your favorite memory of playing with the Cubs? What was
Well,
your favorite
the
memory?
first memory was that the first day that I joined the Cubs, I hit 3 home runs in my first day in the lineup. And I think Robin Roberts I got him early. And so that was the biggest day. And of course, the second being named the manager of the Cubs. They were both thrilling and great times for me. And Unfortunately, they pitched a very tough left-hander the next day, and I didn't do so well.
Oh. Yeah, were you playing first base then or the outfield?
No, first base all the time.
Who was the manager of the Cubs then when you played with the Cubs?
The manager of the Cubs was Bob Sheffing.
Oh, sure,
He
Bob
was a
Sheffield.
catcher in his playing days.
In the late '50s, they actually had a decent team. I mean, unlike the early '50s, so they were near 500. And yeah,
Yeah.
what was managing the Cubs like?
Well, he was honest. He was direct, and I enjoyed Sheffing very much. But unfortunately, there were three first basemen: Dale Long, Dick Gernard, and Jim Marshall. And unfortunately, they alternated quite often. Okay.
So yeah, it's hard for three guys to play one position all the time.
Yeah, it was a little tough.
What was your managing experience like managing the team?
Well, managing the Cubs, my first and foremost experience was the gentleman and nice Mr. Wrigley, who paid some attention to me, asked me to come to Wrigley Building a couple of times just to talk baseball. He liked the Pacific Coast League very much, which I played in for several years. And we talked about that. And then as time went along, he wanted me to hire my coaches, none being with the Cub organization. He wanted a fresh start with everybody being new. So I had to reach out in that area to get the coaches.
A lot of people say that Wrigley didn't really care about winning as long as people just showed up to the ballpark. Of course, there were a lot of years they didn't have great attendance. Do you think he got a bum rap? And I've read that he never, very seldom went to Wrigley Field to see a game. If he did, he would go incognito so people couldn't recognize him.
Well, the only thing I can tell you is I guarantee you that Mr. Wrigley cared about the fans. His fans were more important than winning. And he did several things. And of course, at that time, thought that night baseball wouldn't be as good for the fans as day baseball. And that was one of the big criterias that finally was changed. But
Yeah.
I, I can just tell you that when you just don't have a really good ball club with a lot of good players, it's a tough game in Wrigley Field when the lumber company, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Cincinnati Reds machine comes in. It's you don't get too much sleep the night before that.
No. Do you think not having lights and not playing night baseball, was that a handicap for the Cubs all those years?
No, I did not think it. No, no, I did not think that because it was quite an arrangement that had to be followed because we were on the road in night games and then we had to adjust to all day games again and then back and forth. So I think the schedule had to be better when everybody was on the same page.
Um, and then you played for the Mets briefly, I think, in the first year of an expansion year, '62, and that was the year they lost 120 games, which like they only won 40 or 42. What was that experience like to play for arguably the worst team? Although the White Sox now are probably worse than the.
Well, I only played about 2 months for the Mets, and I was traded to the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I can tell you that I played regularly, and Gil Hodges was the obviously famous and number one player, but he was hurt, so I got to play a lot until he was ready to play, and I did very well. I was very happy. I loved hitting in the Polo Grounds, and the whole scenario was good, but it didn't last long enough.
Well, for your sake, I wish Gil had been out the whole season.
It would have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, the Polo Grounds, that was a very interesting ballpark. It had a real like 450 feet to center field. I mean, it was a lot of room out there.
Yes, it was. It's maybe that's why I got quite a few hits.
A lot of doubles and triples. Yeah. Um, who was the best position player you ever played with or against, and why?
Well, probably played with would be defenses. It was all by him. So Brooks Robinson was the third baseman
All
for
right.
Baltimore, and he was my roommate.
Hmm.
And I can say without a doubt that he was one of the best and made himself a good hitter as time went along. So that would be the
Oh,
answer, Brooks.
you also played with like Willie Mays, Covey, Ernie Banks. I mean, you've played with some great ball players.
Yes, that's why I had a good seat on the bench.
Oh,
It was, but Mays was in a class by himself because he was a five-tool player. He could do everything, and McCovey could hit the ball as far as anyone I've ever known. And also Orlando Cepeda was on that team, and he was also a really good player. So watching those guys and developing, and that was actually a chance for me with the Giants. We went to Japan on a goodwill trip, and I was part of that, and ended up being quite a part of my career.
yeah. Uh, who is the best pitcher you faced, and why?
Well, I didn't get faced him a lot, but Koufax was awful tough, and so was Drysdale.
Hmm.
And Bob Gibson. And remember, in those days, they were very aggressive, and uh, you we didn't even have helmets part of the time.
Hmm.
I needed a suit of armor to play against those guys sometimes.
Yeah, they just had liners inside their hats, as I recall. Before they really had batting helmets, they would just put a liner inside their hat, maybe. But those guys would throw inside a lot, a lot more than they do now. Of course, now you do that, you.
It's very interesting. They threw at you quite a bit when I played, and we'd had no defense. And now they have all this armor they wear, and nobody throws at anybody. So it seemed like it was a backward situation.
Yeah. How many times did you get hit? Did you get hit a fair number of times?
Well, not as many as a lot of good players because they wouldn't want to hit me and put me on base because they could get me out. Okay.
Yeah, true. So you played in Japan after playing here in the U.S. How many years did you play in Japan?
Well, I played 3 years as a player, and then I went back about 10 years later as the co-manager of the team called the Chunichi Dragons, and that was in Nagoya, Japan, the third largest city. Great experience.
What was it like playing in Japan and managing in Japan?
Well, it was pretty exciting. We had the other gentleman was named Kondo-san, and he was the co-manager with me, and we had a great relationship. And it was a little bit different because they play different there. The system and the fundamentals are quite a bit different, and so I had to make the adjustments because it was Japan.
There, at least now, I think they can only have like two or three foreign players on one team. Was that the case back then?
The case when I was there was that you could only have two players. So, and then before I left, they enlarged it to three players that you could have on the major league roster, but only two could play at once. So, if a pitcher's coming in the game, one of us had to give up our positions, and that's. But then finally, I think they can play three now.
Well, at least you had somebody else to speak English with.
Well, yes, and I had an interpreter with me 24 hours a day, and he did a great job in helping me understand. And sometimes, Steve, he would just say, I don't think you want to hear this. So I never knew 100% what was going on. Okay.
Maybe that was for the best. Did you pick up any Japanese? Can you speak it or a little bit or
Well, yes, you pick up some of the words of menus and people, and of course, there's always a situation, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but get out of Vietnam, Yankee go home, White Monkey. Those were the ones that I could hear quite a few from first base.
how much money did you make in Japan compared to playing over here in the US? I've heard they make more.
Oh, definitely more, 3 or 4 times more than I made here as a player, and then I went back as a manager and it was increased even more. So uh, it really helped me in the rest of my life and the appreciation of baseball and just getting to play. The Japanese teammates were very loyal to me and protected me at all times, and it was a great experience.
Uh, how would you compare what level would you say Japanese ball is compared to US ball? Is it the same as the major league level or is it maybe like AAA over here?
Well, when I first got to Japan, I would say double A, triple A at the best, and the pitchers being the best of the group. So, and then that did increase, and they got bigger and stronger. And then that turned out to be, I would say, majority would be major league pitchers and AAA hitters, with power becoming more visible because they got bigger and stronger. So I think that's about where it's at.
The Cubs have a couple of Japanese players, Suzuki and Shota, the pitcher who just pitched 7 innings and no hit balls. So yeah, they've made their mark in the major leagues. Of course, you had the one in Seattle. What was Ichiro?
Well, he was a number one. I had dinner with him almost twice every road trip, and his big and hope and desire was to play in the United States.
Is that the hope of most of those players in Japan eventually play over here? At least the good ones.
Just the better players, the better 2 or 3 players on a team, I would say. But they're pretty good and they work hard.
Yeah, they really stick to the fun. I've read they're really big on fundamentals. They practice a lot on that.
Yes, that's very true. They practice. They feel guilty if they don't practice.
Do you think American players practice enough once the season begins?
Well, I'm sure that they do. Everybody is a little bit different. In Japan, it's a group effort, and here it's a individual effort according to what they think they need to do. So it's a little bit different in the sense of the approach.
Probably just kind of a difference in societies, huh? I suppose, and the cultures.
It was a great country, and I really enjoyed my 7 years there.
What do you think? Speaking of today's players, so what do you think about today's players who make millions of dollars now? Are as they are as they are they as good as they were in your day? Are they better or about the same?
Well, I think, first of all, it can't be measured by money. And I think that the players today have a lot more pressure on them, and the situations are almost entirely different. And I really, I really think that the players today are pretty much the same as they were before, but the power of hitters or the standout people, like you mentioned, the DiMaggios and the Williams and all the, those were the special guys that obviously would be standouts here today's world.
What do you think about free agency? That really changed the game in the mid 1970s when players could become free agents. That really changed things, and they could go after the dollars. Then did that help the game or hurt the game?
I don't think it hurts the game, and I think that it's a privilege that the players, after their performance, have earned. And you have to remember that we had no freedom at all when I played, and you were at the disposal of whatever their wishes were. And now it's a little more of a flexible for the players that play today, also. So it's so different that it can hardly be compared.
Yeah, when you played, nobody had agents. You just went in after the season, talked to the owner, and tried to get a raise. And was PK Wrigley pretty good about that? Was he pretty generous with the raises, or was he a skinflint?
Well, I would say that he was in the top one third of the ownerships that were able to pay a little bit more, but it was pretty uniform. It was pretty well just decided by numbers. If you played 2 years, you made this. You play 3 years, you make this, and back and forth. So the freedom today is very great for a player.
I think back then a few players even got their salary cut, didn't they, if they had a bad year? Didn't they have their salary cut if they had a bad year? I think.
Well, you could have a good year, and it would be come out about even. They'd want to sign you again for about the same amount. So that's where the battle began.
So then you worked for the Arizona Diamondbacks until actually fairly recently. Tell me about what you did for the Diamondbacks and how long you did it.
Well, first of all, I worked for the Diamondbacks for 25 years, and it was a real pleasure. I was what they call the director of the Pacific Rim. I took care of evaluating players in Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and Australia. So 2 times a year, I would be going to those countries and evaluating and seeing who might be available or who would fit into our organization. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement, and a difficult job to pick out players that are going to compete. I mean, when we talked about Ichiro, Ichiro was a great player there, but I had no idea that he would do what he did in America. And pretty special guy.
You think he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely.
What about another great Japanese player, Sadara O, the home run king? Did you meet him, play with him, or manage him?
I played against him and I tried to catch him on home runs. The first year I was there, he just beat me by about 12 or 13 home runs. And as the years went on, the number got bigger. And he was a special guy, a very dedicated guy, and very kind to me. He and Nagashima was the star player with him with the Yomiuri Giants in Tokyo, and both very high class, really nice people to be with on and off the field.
Did he ever want to play in the U.S.?
If he did, I never heard about that. Like with Ichiro, I knew that he wanted to, but with O, of course, that was earlier in my career, but I never heard him say that.
How do you think he would have done playing over here?
Well, I think he would have been. I don't think he would have the numbers that he had in Japan, but I think he would have been better than average and represented himself and the ball club very well. He had a lot of power. He learned how to stay back on that back foot and had great balance. And when he attacked the ball, he did a good job.
Do you still watch baseball games on TV?
Yes, I watch baseball games. I go, and the Diamondbacks have been very kind to me. I have seats there anytime I want to go to the games. Uh, they gave me a National League championship ring last year, and they've done a lot of wonderful things for me. And I really appreciate being a part of that organization.
When you watch baseball today, do you critique the players and say, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that? Or
Steve, I just wear myself out if I did that. No, I don't do that. I watch the score and hope for certain things to happen, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But no, I don't. I don't do that too much because I wouldn't enjoy the game itself if I did that.
What about all these new rule changes like the pitch clock, bigger bases, relief pitcher has to pitch to three batters, all those things they've done to change the game to speed up the game? Do you like those changes?
I'm making adjustments. I'm still out to school on some of them. I'm not sure if all of them are of value, but some are, and I think that with time they'll even make more changes. Okay.
You think we'll ever see the day when we have a robot for a home plate umpire?
Well, I'm just guessing, but all I can say is they had it in the Arizona Fall League, and I was covering the games there just 2 years ago, and I thought it was very good, outstanding. The umpire was behind home plate, but he'd get a radio from, he had the earplug in, and they would call the pitch for him, and then he would signal the pitch, and it went pretty smooth. I think it would increase the game and maybe frustration of what is a ball and what is a strike. Okay.
They do that in the minor leagues here in Des Moines and AAA. They do that, and and the batter, or the pitcher can challenge that call like two or three times a game. If they win the challenge, they can challenge again. If they're wrong, they lose the challenge. But then on the big screen out in center field, they'll show the ball. They'll show whether the ball was whether the pitch was a strike or a ball. So everybody in the ballpark gets to see what the computer saw.
Oh, I didn't know that, Steve. I didn't know that at all. That's very interesting. How's it going over?
Oh, I've seen people think it's okay. I get the odd thing is that ball can touch the outside of the strike zone by maybe probably a quarter inch, and it's still called a strike, even though 98% of the ball wasn't a strike. It's still called a strike because it just barely hit the strike zone. The whole ball does not have to be in the strike zone, just even a little bit. They call it a strike.
Well, that's just very interesting. That's all I can say.
Yeah, just getting used to that in the challenge system. They don't do it all the time, but they try it. They've tried it quite a bit in AAA, at least in the International League. I don't know about Pacific Coast League. Do you have anything else to add for us today? This has been wonderful talking to you. I finally got to see you.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm very fortunate to be here and to still enjoy the game and enjoy it very much. Proud of the years and the people I've met, and I hope that all the people that seem to certainly enjoy baseball continue to, and I would no reason why it wouldn't. And I'm I've been very blessed to be able to do something that I wanted to do my whole life, and I what else can I say? I love baseball. Okay.
Yeah, you and me both. Speaking of baseball, you can get my book, Pug Fireball and Company 116 Years of Professional Baseball in Des Moines, Iowa, by going to pugfireballandcompany.com. The book is also available at Beaverdale Books and In Tandem Arts and Authors Gallery and Bookstore in Des Moines, Hidden Treasures Gifts and Book TQ in Altoona, Dog-Eared Books in Ames, and Barnes & Noble on University Avenue in West Des Moines. Well, the book is out there in several places.
That's very special.
It was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, I had the downtown bookstore, and a person from that store and I went to an Iowa Cubs game on a Friday night, the big fireworks night. They passed out children's books. I had a raffle for my book, and like 31 people entered the raffle for a copy of my book. And then I had the book signing last Thursday, I guess it was, actually at the store. So It's been an interesting summer trying to promote the book.
Well, I'll tell you, that's great, Steve. You certainly added to my career and enjoyment, and I know that you love baseball, and you're very thorough, and you're a really nice guy, and I appreciate being with you.
Well, thank you very much. One more item. While high school and pro football have started, let's not forget the Chicago Cubs and Iowa Cubs are still playing. The I-Cubs final home series starts next Tuesday night against the Louisville Bats. And they end the regular season on Sunday, September 22nd at Rochester. And they've already got the 2025 schedule out. And they'll open the season next year, Friday, March 28th, at home against Omaha. And you know what the weather in the Midwest can be like in March, late March. So who knows? There might be 6 inches of snow on the ground, but they'll scoop it off and they'll play anyway. Well, good day, everyone. Thanks for listening. Thanks for Jim once again appearing and doing this with me. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.